Why? What was the purpose of this movie existing? Other than money, what was the purpose of this movie? But anyways, guys, this is Cole. Welcome back to another horror movie review for the month of October. And today, unfortunately, we're here with a rant. Now, this is not going to be like my most extreme rant because, this movie, compared to something like Scary Movie 5, which granted I haven't reviewed those movies, but compared to something like Scary Movie 5, this movie at least has good things going for it, but at the end of the day, I wasn't a big fan of it, and that, of course, is Evil Dead from 2013, or in other words, the Evil Dead remake. Now, if you guys paid attention to my channel, you guys would know that I am a very big fan of the first 3 Evil Dead movies. In fact, I own the first 3 movies. I mean, let's go over my thoughts on the previous movies. The Evil Dead from 1981, the Evil Dead from 1981, pretty good horror movie directed by Sam Raimi and a good start to his career. Evil Dead 2 from 1987, an absolute masterpiece, my favorite Sam Raimi movie, and easily my favorite movie in the Evil Dead franchise. And then we get to Army of Darkness from 1993, which I absolutely love Army of Darkness. I think that this was a great movie, and in my opinion, this honestly was a great send-off to the franchise. And in my opinion, Army of Darkness should have been the last Evil Dead movie because it perfectly wrapped up Ash Williams. It perfectly wrapped up his story arc. That's why there wasn't need for more Evil Dead movies. But of course, money talks and BS walks, and they had to do it for money, which, no, they didn't, but they did it anyways. But anyways, what is the plot to Evil Dead 2013, and how was the movie received? Well, the plot of the movie is as follows. 5 young friends have found the mysterious and fiercely powerful Book of the Dead. Unable to resist its temptation, they release a malevolent demon on a bloodthirsty quest to possess them all, who will be left to fight for their survival and defeat this unearthly force of murderous carnage in this terrifying reimagining of the original horror classic. Well, that's basically the plot synopsis to the movie, but anyways, how was this movie received? Well, and how was this movie made? Well, after Army of Darkness had come out in 1993, for years and years and years, people were demanding for an Evil Dead 4. In fact, back in 2007, Sam Raimi, after he had done the first 2 Spider-Man movies and Spider-Man 3, he was going to direct Evil Dead 4 with Bruce Campbell coming back, and I don't remember what the exact idea and concept was offhand, but I do remember, from the little bit I do remember reading about, I do remember liking that idea. But of course, we couldn't get that. We had to get this movie instead. But anyways, when the Evil Dead remake was released in theaters on April 4th of 2013, it received positive reviews from critics and audiences. It was a big hit at the box office, making $100 million worldwide on a $17 million budget. Now, as for my reaction to the movie, you can tell based on how I started my review, I'm not a fan of this movie. But it's not the worst remake ever made because, unlike some other remakes that I have seen, this movie at least has some good qualities going for it. But at the end of the day, I wasn't really the biggest fan of this movie. But, so how does our movie start off? Well, the movie starts off where, granted, this is not the main character of the movie, but the movie starts off where there is a girl running away from these people in the woods, and then this girl basically is captured by a group of people in this cult, but also her dad. But instead of it being a cult for evil, it's basically a group to get rid of demonic spirits possessing people, or in other words, the Evil Dead. And we basically find out that this girl at the beginning is possessed by demons, and the dad is left with the difficult choice to eliminate, to put his daughter to sleep. In other words, like, he has to destroy his daughter possessed by a demon, which I will admit that is kind of that is not a bad idea to start a horror movie where you have a person possessed by a demon and a person's left with a difficult choice to get rid of someone they love. Like, that is an idea that could work as an effective concept, because just the thought of that is sad. It really is. But I personally think that, see, the problem I had with this movie was that I personally feel like the actors were miscasted in this movie. Like, now granted, the original Evil Dead, now granted, I'm not gonna say that it had like the greatest acting ever, but see, the reason that the original Evil Dead worked was because, for a few reasons. One, because it had a good but the reason it worked was because, well, the reason the original Evil Dead worked as well because of a few things. One, it was creative. Two, I do like the characters. And three, I do like the story. And what it goes for and all that. But this one, I didn't really like that much because this movie pretty much removed a lot of the charm that the first three movies had. Now, granted, I would not have been against an Evil Dead movie with a more serious tone. I would not have been against that, with removing the dark humor. I would not have been against that personally if it was executed well, but of course, that didn't happen, at least in my personal opinion. But anyways, not too long after that, not too long after the dad sets his girl on fire, the possessed girl, we then cut to the title screen, which says Evil Dead, and then we basically then cut to a group of 5 characters who decide to stay at this remote cabin in the woods, with Mia. See, the only reason I can even remember this main character's name is because one of the characters shouts her name in the movie. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have remembered, because honestly, I did not care for the characters at all in this movie. I thought that they were pretty poorly written, and I especially hated all the guys in this movie, because all of these guys wanted this girl up in the cabin for reasons that that does not sit right with me at all. And then at like the 20-minute mark of the movie, this character Mia, who you see on the cover, which is this girl right here, she basically gets attacked by one of the Evil Deadites, and then of course there's the whole tree scene like in the original, although this version goes for like a more gross version of it, which I will say, even though I'm not a fan of this movie, one of the few pros I will give it is I do think this movie does have some good special effects. When it comes to all the blood and the gore, I do think all the practical effects are really good in the movie. I will give credit for that, and I do think that from a production, and I do think that from a production design standpoint, like if we're talking on a visual level, I do think that visually this is the best looking. It is the best looking Evil Dead movie on a technical level, because technology had advanced and effects had gotten better, but unfortunately that is not enough to save this movie. But then anyways, like I said, we're introduced to Mia, who was attacked by one of the demons in the tree and stuff like that, and she comes back to the cabin and stuff like that, and Mark, who is one of the guys who finds the Book of the Dead, which, I gotta be honest, now granted, I do not have a problem with the pictures inside of the Book of the Dead. However, I'm not a big fan of the cover, because see, what made Evil Dead work was not only its great story, but the creativity. I mean, if you go back and you watch the very first Evil Dead movie, The Evil Dead from 1981, if you look at the Book of the Dead, aka the Necronomicon, it's honestly one of the scariest books. I mean, it's a book that is bound in human flesh, and most importantly, the book itself has a creepy face that is indented on the cover of the book, and another reason that idea works with the original is because the book has a creepy cover, and the cover basically has like a face pressed up against it, basically has an indent pressed up against it, as if a demonic face had pressed its face onto the cover itself. Like, that's what made the Necronomicon such a cool book. What made it look like a cool, scary book. But in this version, it's just generic. Like, it's like, okay, it's just like a book with like stitches on the cover. I'm like, I'm sorry, but that right there is absolutely lazy. It really is. And throughout the course of the movie, this 5 group of friends, they start to notice that something is off about the place. And another thing I gotta say that I really don't like about this movie, spoilers for those who haven't seen this movie or any of the previous Evil Dead movies, there's a whole scene where one of the friends ends up, because a demon possesses a woman's hand, and like this, what looks like a disease is spreading up, caused by Mia, who's possessed by one of the demons. This girl ends up cutting her arm off. Now to a certain degree, I get it, because she is starting to become possessed by a demon. And now look, I get it. I get that she is under the impression that if she does this, her body will not become possessed by a demon whatsoever. Like, I get it. Like, I get that that's what the character was thinking, but and don't get me wrong, like I said, this movie does have some really good practical effects to it, but considering what happens not too long after that, the whole scene is stupid and pointless, because the girl who cut off her arm so she would not become possessed, she gets possessed anyways. So for that reason alone, like, I gotta ask, like, what was the whole point in that scene? Like, honestly, like, what was the whole point of that scene? Now, yes, I know people are gonna sit there and say, oh, but Ash Williams, he did that in Evil Dead 2, which, yes, that is true, but you want to know the difference with that movie? The reason it actually worked with Evil Dead 2 is for a few reasons. Number one, Ash Williams, played by Bruce Campbell, is a great, likable character, so that's the first reason it worked. Reason number two, his hand got possessed by a demon, so he had to cut his hand off so it wouldn't take over his body. And thirdly, he ends up replacing his hand with a chainsaw. Now, if this movie would have done something like, for example, let's say that the girl, instead of replacing half of her arm with like a chainsaw, like, what if she was able to replace her arm with a shotgun? Like, okay, if the movie would have decided to go in that direction, I would not have had a problem with that. Now, granted, that doesn't mean it would automatically make the movie good, but okay, but if they would have done that, I would have been like, okay, that's some nice creative liberty, but no, we can't do that apparently. But anyways, the girl who ended up, taking her arm off, it was basically duct taped shut, to stop the bleeding by one of her friends, and then guess what? She is possessed by a demon, and like, okay, this is one thing that really puts me off. Like, this, now granted, I get that this is a remake, and I get that you don't want to copy everything from the original, but I honestly thought that it was stupid she got possessed, because, well, okay, never mind, I guess I take that back. But now granted, yes, I know that in Evil Dead 2, Ash Williams does get possessed by a demon, but the difference is, he was able to snap out of it quick. In this movie, the possessed girl with the yellow hair, unlike Ash Williams in Evil Dead 2, she does not snap out of it whatsoever. Like, she does not snap out of it. So I'm like, okay, this is stupid. But again, like I said, this movie does have its pros. Like, okay, I guess if I have to give any positives to this movie, I do think that for a movie that had a $17 million budget, I will say that the movie does have good production design. The practical effects are good in the movie. I do really like the music in this movie. And I do like the whole finale, of the movie where where the final girl, Mia, is, she loses her hand, but with her other hand uses the chainsaw and is able to defeat the main person possessed by a demon. Like, okay, that was not a bad way to end the movie. And I guess the whole screwdriver, and I guess the whole idea where I guess the whole idea where a deadite possesses a person, and instead of like and a deadite, and I guess the whole idea of a deadite using a nail gun as a weapon was not a bad idea, because I mean, I'll give it credit, it was something new that was not in the previous Evil Dead movies before this. But other than that, Evil Dead 2013, I'm personally not a fan of this remake. I think that this was a failed attempt. Now granted, not from a box office standpoint, but like from a movie quality standpoint, I personally think that this movie was a failed attempt to bring back the Evil Dead series. And honestly, in terms of the movies should have stopped with Army of Darkness, which I think was a perfect way to end the series. But I will say, it's not all bad, because after this, Evil Dead did have a TV series called Ash vs. Evil Dead, where Bruce Campbell came back. Now, granted, I have only seen the first season of that TV show, but from what I have seen, Ash vs. Evil Dead is a good TV show. So I guess one good thing came out after this. But other than that, Evil Dead 2013 is not a very good remake. I think it's a very overrated horror movie. I thought the actors were miscasted. I did not care for the characters whatsoever. I did not think that the characters were very good, and just, yeah. I personally, and also I gotta say that the whole ending to this movie is stupid, because after Mia manages to defeat the main possessed deadite, the movie teases a sequel at the end. But guess what? They never made a sequel to this movie, and instead, they gave us the 2023 movie Evil Dead Rise, which is not a sequel. It's not a sequel to this movie, but it is a sequel to Army of Darkness. But they did not bring back Ash Williams. It's weird. Like, it's a sequel to the first three movies, but without any of the same characters. So yeah, just I really don't care for this movie. But I will say, a couple years after this, Fede Alvarez, he did direct a 2016 movie called Don't Breathe, which, hey, I thought that Don't Breathe was actually pretty good, but this one, on the other hand, I'm not a fan of, and I'm going to give Evil Dead 2013 a 4 out of 10. And my recommendation is, if you're going to check out the Evil Dead movies, if you've never seen them, my tip of advice, I would say you should avoid this movie and avoid Evil Dead Rise, and just stick to the first three movies directed by Sam Raimi. But yeah, there we go, guys. That was my rant on Evil Dead 2013. Tell me down below in the comment section, what do you think of this movie? Are you in the majority of Evil Dead? Are you one of the Evil Dead fans that loves this remake like many people do? Or are you like me, where you're a fan of the first three Evil Dead movies but not a fan of the remake? Comment down below and let me know. But yeah, we'll catch you guys for the next review later.